We would now like to display and massage Auger line scans. We need to first load that file. To find out the file name, let's enter the directory by pressing function key 13. We again want our subfile instruction to be highlighted. We then want to list the files, which is soft key number 2. We also want extended listing type output. Pressing function key number 3 and toggling to extended. We can then execute pressing soft key number 1. We see that our Auger line scan is file name MWT107. We can now exit the directory, soft key number 8. Continue to exit, soft key number 8. And enter the load menu, function key number 15. What I would like to do is we can superimpose line scans on SEM maps or SEM images and also on Auger maps. So I will leave files MWT101 and MWT104 loaded, and I will load using line number 3 our line scan MWT107. We now want to display that menu, pressing soft key number 1. Looking more closely at the line display menu, once again line number 1 tells us which file we are manipulating. Line number 2, since we obtained multiple line scans, we can choose to display any of the lines or all of the lines. The line scan that we have stored under file name MWT107 is actually 4 different lines. That was 3 horizontal lines and 1 vertical line, totaling to 4 lines. So we can choose which line we want to display and manipulate with function key number 2 and entering the line we want to display. Number 3 allows us to choose the region. We can look at an individual region, or we could display and look at all of the regions. Function key number 4 will allow us to choose the destination where we want to display the line scans we have chosen to display. We can display them either here on the terminal, or we could choose to display them on the digital storage monitor. Let's begin by displaying line number 1, region number 1, on the terminal. So our destination will be here rather than digital storage monitor. Pressing soft key number 1, we can then display region 1, line number 1. Line number 1 was our line scan across the tantalum and silicon area where we saw no gold. Region number 1 is a display of our gold signal. Notice what we see is noise level. In evaluating this, I would like to display the tantalum and silicon, but not display the gold. Gold does not give us any information on the line scan. Again, it appears to be only noise level. We want to then leave function key number 2 display on line 1. Pressing function key 3, we now want to change to region 2 and enter. Once again, since we can be displaying multiple lines and multiple regions, our soft keys number 1 allows us to display, which will erase what is already displayed and display the new graph. Soft key number 2 allows us to display add full, which we discussed previously in manipulating survey scans, and also display add auto, soft key number 3. Since I do not want the gold to be displayed, I want it erased, so I will press soft key number 1 to display the tantalum line scan for line number 1. I now want to change region to region number 3, and I would like to do a display add full, pressing soft key number 2. That will now add to my tantalum line scan the silicon line scan. We see that we have a good correlation between where tantalum is, we have no silicon, and where we have silicon, we have no tantalum. Line scans are acquired and stored and then displayed as peak minus background. That gives us our peak height. They have not yet been normalized. We discussed with Auger maps that to eliminate any topographical influence, we utilize the first order topographical correction, that is to take the peak minus background and divide it by the background. These line scans are displayed without being divided by the background, so we would like to normalize them. To do that, we enter our data massage bank by pressing soft key number 5. We see again on the bottom the soft keys and the functions which are now appropriate to use on the line scans. To normalize the line, we can then press soft key number 1, which is normalize line. What that will do is it will divide the peak minus background signal of the line scan by the appropriate background in order to give us a normalized line scan. The line scan it will perform this function on is the last line scan that was displayed. In this case, it is our silicon line scan, which is region 3, line number 1, as displayed in our graphics labeling. That will then be the green line scan being silicon. Pressing soft key number 1, we now have a normalized silicon line scan. We can also smooth that line scan. To do that, we will hold the shift key and press the smooth soft key, which is soft key number 8. That allows us to enter the smooth menu. It then highlights which line scan it will smooth. Let's do a 3-point smooth on that line scan by pressing soft key number 1. At this point, what I would like to do is pick the next curve. In order to normalize the tantalum, we have to somehow have the tantalum as the last displayed line scan. And the way we can do that is to pick that curve so that that curve is highlighted. Right now the silicon curve is highlighted. While we are in the smooth menu, I can choose to pick curve, which is soft key number 6. I can then press next curve, which is soft key number 3, and we now see that the tantalum is highlighted and the silicon has returned to its original color, which is green. Now that we have this curve picked, we can press soft key number 1 to pick that curve. We now see that the graphics labeling no longer says element silicon region 3 line 1, but element tantalum region 2 line 1. That is now the curve that we can manipulate. At this point, we do not want to smooth the tantalum peak because we cannot normalize a line that has already been manipulated. So what I would like to do is exit the smooth menu. I used the smooth menu in order to pick the tantalum curve and display the tantalum as now being the line which we can manipulate. But I do not want to actually perform the smooth function at this time. Then I would not be able to normalize that line scan. Now that we have the tantalum line highlighted and that is our new curve, let's exit the smooth menu using soft key number 8. We now can normalize that tantalum line using soft key number 1. Our smooth is already set up for a 3-point smooth, so we do not have to enter the smooth menu. We can just press soft key number 8 and we will smooth the tantalum line. We now have superimposed line number 1, the tantalum in red and the silicon in green. We could get a hard copy now, but our hard copy is in black and white, and we might forget which line is silicon and which line is tantalum. We have the information that this is the microwave transistor. We also have the information in the graphics display on the top that it is line number 1. What I would then like to annotate is that the line scan should be referred to our lines which we superimposed on the SEM map, which was photo 106. We need to then enter the graph annotate mode, pressing the next key, which is function key number 23. We see our next data bank, which allows us to graph annotate, soft key number 8. We would also like to identify this as silicon, tantalum, silicon, tantalum, silicon, tantalum, silicon, because again the copy that we will be getting is in black and white and we will not be able to distinguish them. Let's then enter that text of silicon, locate it with the crosshairs, and annotate. I would also like to refer this line scan to the SEM photo where we have the line scans, which was photo 106. We'll start out with photo, and let's put that in an open area under the silicon line scan here. And 106. We now have it annotated the way we want. We can exit the graph annotate mode, soft key number 8, and let's obtain a copy holding the control key and pressing print. Let's now go through the same routine and display the regions for line number 2. Superimpose them. First evaluate if there are any regions we do not want included in the line scan, and obtain a hard copy of that. Let's first clear the screen, Control and clear. We can then return to the line display menu, holding the Shift key, pressing function key number 15. Let's now look at line number 2, so pressing function key number 2 and typing in 2. Let's first look at region number 1, which is already chosen, and the destination on the terminal rather than the digital storage monitor. Let's now display soft key number 1. Let's now display add region number 2, pressing function key number 3 in order to choose the region, and typing in region number 2. And we want a display add full, soft key number 2. Once again, in looking at this signal, we see noise level, no real information from the tantalum. Line number 2 was the line which went across the wide gold pads. It looks like we have no tantalum information in that line scan. Let's look at region number 3. Display add that full using soft key number 2. And we see that what we want to display is the gold and the silicon peaks, but not use the tantalum. Let's once again then display region number 1. We want to use the display soft key number 1, so it will erase what has already been displayed. And let's display add region number 3, soft key number 2. And let's then begin our data manipulation, pressing soft key number 5, entering the data massage, using the previous bank, which allows us to normalize the line. Once again, when we normalize the line, it will normalize the last line displayed, which is also displayed in our graphics label. That will be the silicon peak. Pressing soft key number 1 will then normalize the silicon line. We now want to smooth that, so we will press soft key number 8. We have now normalized and smoothed the silicon line. We now want to manipulate the gold line. To do that, we will have to enter a menu. Let's again enter the smooth menu by using Shift and soft key number 8. We want to pick curve, soft key number 6. The curve that is now selected is the silicon. We want the gold, so we will press next curve, soft key number 3. The gold is now highlighted. Press soft key number 1 to pick that curve. Again, if we smooth now, we can then not normalize, so we do not want to smooth. We want to exit the smooth menu. We used it only to pick the gold curve. Now notice that the graphics label says that the element that is displayed is the gold. That is what we will now manipulate. We can now normalize that line using soft key number 1. And smooth that line using soft key number 8. Let's once again annotate. Pressing function key number 23 allows us to go to the next soft key bank. Graph annotate is soft key number 8. We start out with the silicon signal. Gold. And once again, we want to refer to photo 106. Now that we have the proper annotation, we can exit the graph annotate, obtain a copy by holding the control and hitting the print key. Using then this same method, we will obtain copies of all 4 line scans and annotate the gold, the silicon, and the tantalum. Let's now demonstrate how to display the line scans on the digital storage monitor. Let's first clear the screen using the control and clear. Return to the line display menu holding the shift key and function key 15. What we now want to do is display the line 2, and we can display region 1. We want to now change our destination from here to digital storage monitor by pressing function key number 4 and toggling to DSM. Looking then at the TV monitor, which is now clear, we have no image, by pressing display, which is soft key number 1. I now have displayed the baseline where the line scan was acquired, and also line number 2, region number 1, which is the gold signal. I can superimpose on that region number 3 by pressing function key number 3 and typing in the proper region number, and using soft key number 2, which is display add. I have now display added the silicon with the gold. Let's also look at line number 1. Function key number 2 and typing in line number 1. Region number 3, we can display add. Let's include line number 1, region number 1, function key number 3 to change the region, region number 1, display add, which is soft key number 2. This was the gold, which we saw little or no signal of gold on line number 1. Let's just quickly look at line number 3. Region number 1. And let's superimpose the silicon peak, which is region number 3. What we see is we can display the lines on the digital storage monitor. What we can also do is obtain either the SEM map or the Auger map and superimpose the line scans on top of them. That is what I would like to demonstrate next. Going back to the terminal, we see that in the file we have included MWT101, which is our SEM map, and MWT104, which is our Auger maps. What I would first like to do is look at the SEM map. So we will use function key number 1 and toggle from file MWT107 to MWT101. We now want to enter. That will enter the map display mode. We want the SEM map in gray, 256 levels, and we want it full scale, no quadrants. Soft key number 1 will display that. Going to the TV monitor, we see that when we press that key, it will erase the line scans and will display our SEM map. With our SEM map displayed, we are now ready to enter the line display menu. Going back to the terminal, the way we can do that is toggle once again our file to the line scans, which is MWT107, pressing function key number 1, toggling to MWT107, entering. That will then enter the line display menu. We would like to look at line number 1, function key number 2, changing to line number 1. And let's look at the tantalum region, which is region number 2, function key number 3, and entering region number 2. And we want the destination to be digital storage monitor, function key number 4, toggling to DSM. Returning then to the TV monitor, we can ask to display soft key number 1, and we will see superimposed on our SEM map the tantalum line scan and the baseline line number 1. We can then obtain an image of this, obtain a photograph by entering the photo setup mode. To do that, going back to the terminal, let's exit the line display menu using soft key number 8. Enter the photo setup using shift, pressing function key number 20. And let's again leave the fields turned off, but let's include the DSM text annotate, soft key number 2. Going back to the TV monitor, we then see that we can choose the location for our annotation. changing the font size to 2, and then once again changing the location. I would like to include that this is line number 1, tantalum line scan. I can enter text using soft key number 3. Including then the annotation line number 1, tantalum line scan. Going back to the terminal, we can then go back to our previous menu, which is first we must press escape to terminate the text entry, return to the previous menu, soft key number 6. We see that our comments are MWT digital SEM map. That is still true. Maybe we should include that comment. So we can toggle the comments on using function key 7. And we're now ready to obtain a photo. Soft key number 1. Open the shutter and strike enter to proceed. Now that the photo is complete, we can close the shutter, develop the film, strike enter, and prepare for our next photo. Let's now exit the photo identification selection menu, pressing soft key number 8. Re-enter the line display menu, shift and function key 15. What I would like to do is the same thing, superimposing a line scan, but let's do it now on one of the maps. Let's choose the gold map. We want to then manipulate file number MWT104, which is where our gold map is located. Function key number 1, toggling to MWT104, striking enter. Region 1 is gold. We want to display in gray and 256 levels of gray. We can now display pressing soft key number 1. And again, going back to the TV monitor, we see our digital SEM map. Pressing soft key number 1 to display the gold will then erase that map and display our gold map. Now that the map is displayed, let's go back to the terminal. We now want to superimpose the gold line scans, file MWT107. We can toggle to MWT107, strike enter. Line number 2 is across the gold, and so is line number 3. Let's look at line number 2, region number 1, destination DSM, function key number 4, and toggling to DSM. We can now display that, returning to the TV monitor, pressing soft key number 1, will then display line number 2 and the gold line scan superimposed on the gold image. Let's also superimpose line number 3, region number 1, do a display add, which is now soft key number 2. And again, we see a nice correlation with the gold map and the corresponding gold line scans. At this point, we would like to take a photo of this. Going back to the terminal, let's exit from the line display menu, pressing soft key number 8. Let's enter our photo setup, shift and function key number 20. We no longer have the MWT digital SEM map, so let's toggle our comments off using function key number 7, toggling to off. But still, we would like to annotate, soft key number 2. We then see on the TV monitor, once again, cursor, locate where we would like to annotate. Enter text, soft key number 3. Gold map and line scans. Let's now change our font size to a font size of 2. Going back to the terminal, we can do that by function key number 1, changing the font size to 2. Looking at the TV monitor, that then puts the cursor back in the center. What I would like to do with a smaller font size is type in a number 1 for this line. I'm sorry, a number 2 for this. This is our line scan number 2, and a number 3 for our third line scan. So I will go to the far left side of the screen, enter text, number 2, escape to terminate text entry, then move the cursor down to line number 3, enter text, and number 3. Escape to terminate text entry. Going back now to the terminal, we can go to the previous menu using soft key number 6. We're ready to obtain the photo. Pressing soft key number 1. We can then open the shutter, strike enter to proceed. When the photo is finished, we can then close the shutter, develop the film, strike enter, and prepare for the next photo. We have now demonstrated various ways of displaying and massaging Auger line scans, including obtaining hard copies of those line scans, and also photos of the line scans superimposed either on SEM images or Auger maps. This concludes the section on Auger line scans.